I will call the District Objection Committee meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. The orders of the day are set in accordance with District Policy 2522. Objections to adoption or use of instructional, library media center, or reading list materials. Before continuing with the orders of the day, in recognition of Purple Up Day in the district, I would like to take a moment to emphasize and recognize the sacrifices of military children while their parents serve our nation. Thank you on behalf of the SDIRC. The first order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next order of business is to conduct roll call. Please say here when I call your name. Diane Parentella, here. Christy Miletto.
Here.
Colleen McCallum.
Here.
Katie Carr-Max.
Here.
LaDonna Corbin. Laura Torres.
Here.
Liz Cannon.
Here.
Sarah Van Brimmer.
Here.
Thank you. The purpose of the District Objection Committee is to review objections submitted by parents, legal guardians, or residents of the county for library, media materials, reading lists, and district-approved instructional materials. Once a parent, legal guardian, or resident's initial objection at the school level has been denied, the petitioner's challenge escalates to a review by the members of the District Objection Committee. If anyone present would like to address the committee regarding an item on this agenda, please raise your hand and be recognized. Seeing none, I will move on. I call for a motion to accept the meeting minutes from 2/21/2024.
Let's kind of move approval.
Liz Cannon moved. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Katie Carr-Max, second. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So. In preparation for review, 3 copies of Ban This Book by Alan Gratz were provided to members of the District Objection Committee from the current circulation inventory. Based on committee member discussions during the February 21st meeting, other members of the committee indicated their preference to purchase their own copy of Ban This Book, ensuring the ISBN is a match to the challenged material. In addition, the petitioner made an opening statement addressed to the District Objection Committee to include the specific objection of Ban This Book. The petitioner's basis for the objection is that, quote, the material depicts or describes sexual conduct as defined in section 847.001, parens 19, Florida statutes. As a reference, the submitted specific material objection form for Ban This Book has been included as backup documentation for this meeting and has been provided to each member of this committee. The committee members have read the objected material in its entirety and has reconvened to discuss findings. In accordance with Florida Statute 286.001, each member of the committee will memorialize their recommendation using the School District of Indian River County's District Objection Committee Review Checklist. This checklist has been included as backup documentation for this meeting and has been provided to each member of this committee. The committee will now discuss their findings. The petitioner may be present during the time in which the committee is discussing and voting. However, the petitioner may not participate or contribute during any phase of the deliberations. Voting must comply with FS 286.001. A vote of a simple majority of those present entitled to vote will determine the resolution of the complaint. At this time, I make a motion to retain this material.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So the motion carries. The vote and recommendation will be forwarded to the superintendent, who will then submit the committee's findings to the school board for a review and rendering of a final determination. At this time, there are no pending district-level challenges for the committee to review. When a formal challenge is received, an email communication will be sent to committee members with detailed next steps. One question, our backup checklist, does that need to be turned in today?
If you have it with you and it contributed to your recommendation, we do need to keep it for public record.
Okay,
And if you don't have it with you, it needs to be provided promptly. Again, because it's a public record, if and to the extent that you used it as part of your review for today.
so at the last meeting, in our packets, we were given this form. If you used your form to help with your decision, then it should be turned in as quickly as possible. If you don't have it today, it can be dropped off. Attention to Dr. Shafty. So with all that being said, I would like to adjourn this meeting at 5:37.
Woohoo, thank you.
Or-
You can,
So-
in order to have the discussion that is part of the agenda.
So as part of the agenda, there is a discussion to take place with the committee about their findings. So I will reconvene to have the committee discuss their findings.
I think, and I'll be happy to do it. I think we need to move to reconsider in order to discuss the text. So I move. So move.
Okay, I second. All in favor? Okay. So is there anyone who wants to share their findings with the committee about what they found reading the book, Ban This Book?
I can start. I thought it was a great book. I have a 10-year-old daughter. I thought she would love this book. She would be devastated if she went to the library and she couldn't pick out a book that she loved. In terms of the specific issue that was objected to, I didn't find that anywhere in the text. There were references to other banned books, but it wasn't, it didn't fit the category of sexual content as defined in Section 847.001 Florida statute. I really like this book. I would recommend it to a school-aged child. It told the importance of intellectual freedom, the power of books, and the value of standing up against censorship. It was very topical. I thought that the author accomplished this really well. He highlights the transformative effect that books can have on readers' lives. So I vote to keep it.
Thank you.
I also agree that it did not meet the standard from the statute. The part in the book where the questionable material was discussed, it actually referenced, and I thought the author handled it beautifully, showed the child, she saw the book, what the objectionable book was, and got a little, reacted as a young child might and put it back, and it was not discussed in any depth. There was no sexual content whatsoever in this text. I agree with you. I thought it was a terrific book.
Yeah, I thought
I
that,
found the same thing, but what I recognized at the end of the book is the dad, they talk about the Hunger Games and the child wants to read it, and the dad, kind of wraps it up nicely in that he says, you're too young for this, but maybe in a couple of years. So I felt like the opinions were balanced in the book in a relatable kind of way for school-age children. I also didn't find any objectionable material that was depicting sexual content or anything like that. I think we discussed at the last meeting that the book referenced in this book was not available in our SDIRC libraries. So that is something also that I kind of took into consideration, because there was a list in the book of the books that they were sharing that were objected to in their school library. But given that it's not even accessible here, I felt like it wasn't something that you would have to read that book to understand this material or anything like that.
And I also agree. I kind of went back, and I actually shared the reading with my 13-year-old that has autism. And like you said, the reference book, I did research to see that we did not even have that book on the shelf, but it made him curious about what that book was. And after just having a parental conversation with him and just sharing how I felt about the book and what I thought it was referencing to, I asked him would he still be interested in reading the book, and he said no. He said, you gave me all the answers that I needed, and if at any time he chooses that he would want to read the book, I would sit down as a parent and give him that option to doing it. But this was actually a wonderful read. It took me back to where I think I fell in love with reading from the Boxcar Kids. And it really really engulfed me and took me back to how I became an avid reader from reading this, to where I just following the statute law with the 3 references that they gave of just saying a word and then spelling a word. I just didn't see how it would arouse anything or cause any, I didn't. It's a beautiful book.
I agree. I thought the power of seeing those children speak up and the effectiveness of working together, and I think the dialogue of what she's thinking and what she does, I think it's appropriate for children, and I thought the parents handled it wonderfully and how involved they became, and to see those kids go to school board meetings, I think we should see more of that, and I thought it was a great read, and I would want my child to read this book.
I disagree. I think it was rarely referenced a lot to this book that has highly graphic and sexual contents and sexual information that I don't agree that should be allowed to be seen by elementary or middle school students. So I think because they reference it so many times, I think that might entice an individual to go and look further into the publication and see something that wouldn't be appropriate for their age.
I agree with that. I think it is encouraging almost to go check out this book list. And the book's not all bad. I'm not going to sit here and tell you the whole book is terrible. And I didn't check, every box is yes or no. But I definitely think that if they had not referenced the sexually explicit books, I think the book would have been more well done. Because now you're taking it, we're talking about elementary age kids, not a chance my kid would read something like this. Because my kid would be like, oh, what's that book? Just like the kid in the book. I mean, she didn't put the book back. She put the book back because she saw something inappropriate, which was the porn that is being referenced. So, and I respect all of you guys' opinion, and I, respectfully agree to disagree. And we're all here together in this, but I would have to disagree that it's referenced too many times to direct the children to find that book. That's just my opinion.
But, so, as we discussed at the last meeting, that book that is referenced is not in circulation in our school district. So the students cannot access that book through the school library system. So the basis of this petition was that Ban This Book has sexual content that is objectionable. But Ban This Book, I did not find objectionable sexual content. I found the reference to another book, but that secondary book is not part of our library circulation. So if a child reads Ban This Book and decides they want to pursue finding it's perfectly normal, they're not going to find it on a school library shelf.
I mean, social media is rampant. I mean, the kids all have their
But-
phones, but to your point, I understand what you're trying to say, and I validate what you're saying, and I hear you. But referencing a sexual book, come on. Like, you could have referenced any other book, but the one that you chose to reference in this book for elementary age children that's in our schools, you're referencing a pornographic novel, basically, that I'm not even going to repeat what's in that book. And it's encouraging. It doesn't necessarily fall under the statute that she referenced, but would it fall under the indoctrination? Possibly. You're encouraging my child to go outside of my will of my home and seek out a book that would be against moral compass in my home.
I
Isn't
think
that your parental right?
that this content that we're discussing is what the author was trying to accomplish. He was trying to show us that these young readers were able to execute judgment on whether or not that this book was for them or not. And then, like my committee member pointed out, there was also the discussion with the dad at the end of the book where he was able to help guide his daughter as well. So I think that just discussing why you're asking why was it in there, I think it was an important part of what he was trying to accomplish is that kids have discernment that they can use as well.
Not an elementary school kid, sorry.
Mine do.
I mean,
Did you find it ironic?
every parent's different.
You're correct.
Did you find it ironically that even though he referenced, that the book was referenced several times in this book, they never received the book from the school, the books were bought from other people's homes, that they were already circulated in other people's homes. Majority of these books were bought from other kids, from their collections in their homes, what their friends had, what their parents had. Out of their circulation from home and bought them into the school. So, like you're saying, this is not even in circulation in our school, so if your child was referenced to this book, they could easily still go and get it. from a book.
She was actually given the book, like a box of books from a teacher.
That book wasn't in it.
But
That book
one
was
of the banned
specifically-
books was
one of
in
the
that.
banned books, But that book specifically was given to her by another little girl that she had at home, because she was so surprised that she had that book.
But I'm just referencing that she got a whole box from a teacher.
I think one thing we want to consider too is that while it looks like the majority of the committee thinks that, there's not objectionable content in this, that parents still have a right to make clear what their children have access to in our school libraries. So if parents read this and find that it is not appropriate based on their values and beliefs, then absolutely, there's a process for that. And I think we've discussed before, all kids are unique, and as individuals, there may be some parents who don't believe in having their kids have access to that, and that's okay.
And our library management software is designed to set alerts. So I have students that have alerts that pop up. Can't check out these authors, can't check out these books, no horrors. So it is designed to protect students whose parents want them not to read certain books. So we do have a process that parents can pursue if there are books that they want to identify that are off limits to their children. But they shouldn't be off limits to all children.
I mean, they're
And
still
that-
at the
I think
public
that's
library.
That's where we're talking. It's one thing for you to make a decision for your child, but it's a different thing to make a decision for all the children. And not every child can get themselves to the public library. So,
But to that, every parent doesn't have access to the internet or doesn't have access to your portal at the library. So when you say that, and I know that for a
there's a
fact.
paper form that is available at the beginning of the school year So our
I
school
don't-
library telephone numbers are public, like, we have ways to communicate with families that don't have internet.
So what if
So,
someone misses that form? I mean, because I didn't even know the form existed.
Kids can't check out books until the parent gives some type of consent, so your children had to
so
have
it's
your
part of the
permission in
orientation
beginning.
packet.
Right, but
There's
I
all the forms.
never saw the form.
And then tomorrow, you can go change your form. Tomorrow, you can go add to your form. Tomorrow, you can make adjustments to your form that then I would get a notification about.
Through
So-
the chair, Mike,
Yes.
to give a little bit of context, so that library access form is in the parent acknowledgement forms at the beginning of the year. I know that there are quite a few in there. You cannot see your student's schedule until you get through completing all the acknowledgement forms. Then we do waves of monitoring. If you didn't complete the form, you get a nice little general Connect Ed call. You get a text message to the form. So we usually have between 4 and 5 layers of outreach before a decision is made that we cannot withhold a child from accessing materials, especially in the elementary spaces, because it's part of their cultural arts specials wheel. So historically, at least for the past 2 years, we have a minimum of targeted outreach attempts. Usually, we stop and make that final call around the 20th to the 25th day of school, but it's not ever you missed it, so it changes to full access.
Thank you for
A lot of the
clarifying.
librarians are so heightened right now that I know personally our media specialist, she reaches out to parents if she sees they do not have that form completed. She's like, hey, I see you didn't complete the library access form. I'll send one home with Marvin this afternoon, take a look at it. And the parents say, well, I don't know what that is. Well, let me explain to you. So we stuff envelopes, sending them out to parents if they see that they don't have them, because they have to go in and register the form, so.
The only reason I brought that up is for 7 years, I was a social worker for the state, so I have a very clear understanding of how many parents are not involved and how many kids in our system don't have parent involvement, period. So even if I disagree with what you're doing as a parent, it doesn't affect my house, but I also am thinking about other children where if they pick up a book unknowingly and now this sexual, depiction triggers them because they were sexually abused, that's my thought. It's not, my house is good, we're under control over there, okay? My kids are under wrap. But it's other children that don't have a voice. It's the kids that could be triggered by words, that could be triggered by a scent, those are the kids I'm concerned about.
So from the DFAC system, there's a governing body that the state pays to be able to provide care and supervision for these children. I myself worked at Hibiscus. I was one of the more lenient, they didn't say lenient, I meant to say I was the more stern house parent that came in on the weekends, that I governed everything. It's like they hated to see me come through the door, because they knew that weekend was, if you're not supposed to have it, you're not gonna get it. You're not supposed to be on it, you're not gonna do it. But you do have some that kind of are lenient, like you say, and things are, but, tax funds are paying for them to be supervised and governed, to not have situations like that happen to them also. So, again, I have to hold them accountable to where if they were removed from their parents because of this situation and I put them in your care, it's now your responsibility to be that absent adult in their life.
So how would you also, and moving forward, just for, when the book fairs go about, do you still follow the instructions from the,
we have a letter that goes out
yeah,
telling parents the book fair is coming, here are the dates. We review the books. As a media specialist, I know that this is the policy. So when the books come in for the book fair, before we open, we look at the books to see what might be there. Parents have an opt-out. Their children don't have to come to the book fair. They can notify the school that they don't want their child to go to the book fair. So we have all of that covered in notifications that go out. Here are the dates and times of the book fair, so that you know when the book fair is happening at your child's school. And then there's always an opt-out. I don't want my child to go, or I will bring my child so that I can be there with them to help them pick out the books. So that is what usually happens at the elementary level in particular, is where my experience is with book fairs. But I know that all librarians in the district are instructed when they have a book fair to send a notification to families share a link to a digital flyer that has some of the books, and that's the policy. So if there are schools that are not following that policy, then we need to be made aware of that so that we can rectify that situation. So
What-
if you know of book fairs that are going on without notification to families, then we need to be made aware of that so that we can address that issue with those individual
I
media
was just curious,
specialists.
because I know the books are a little bit different from what's in the circulation of the library, so I was just curious if you followed the same policy when they're buying books as what, you know, because they fill out the forms, right? And so I didn't know if you followed the same guidelines.
I myself look at the books that are on display for sale. I don't read them all, but I take a good look at what's being advertised and make decisions about what should stay out and what should stay in the box.
Gotcha.
So I know my colleagues would do the same.
Getting back to
Well,
this,
I think that all of this data that we've collected to provide to media specialists is great. It makes your job easier, I assume. I think we should not gloss over the fact that people like Mrs. Parentella are professional educators, and that's a skill set that we should value, not just these data points that we collect. I trust that she knows what she's doing, that she knows the kids in her school, their interests, their reading level, something about their background, who they play with, and all of that can't be measured. And so I'm sorry, I feel like maybe this is not easy for you to take, this sort of disrespect.
Through the chair, if I can just make a couple of statements, please, very quickly.
Yes,
You all have been discussing a number of policy issues. I just want to point out that the vote under the policy is whether the material meets the requirements under 1006-28. And you all have discussed that in general. I would also make a recommendation, because there appears to be strongly held contrary position, that the minutes consistent with Florida statute and Robert's rules reflect the basis for the positions of the no votes, so that we are able to give the clearest record we can to the school board as to what the bases are, especially since we've had clearly a very robust discussion.
yes, so you wanted to get back to the book?
oh, yes, so sex has been mentioned several times throughout this book, and I just don't see the need to even bring that topic up for K through 8. So for elementary, middle school, I think this book would have been much better had we left it out. And then especially referencing the highly sexual book. It's perfectly normal.
But by definition, this book, this book, does not have sexual conduct that follows the definition. Is that correct, Mr. Ansbach?
That's for you to make the findings. You all are the finders of fact. I am not.
So the lawyer last
Item
time,
5.
he said that we could vote based on the material being mentioned multiple times. Is that correct?
If you find that the references to the other book are so integral to this book that you believe that this book fails the standard under 1006.28, then you may recommend to remove it. If you do not, then you may recommend to keep it. And again, you all are the finders of fact. I am not.
That's pretty much where I stand, and it's, you know, I can agree to disagree with you. I'll still respect your stance and respect you as a teacher and appreciate what you do. But that's where I stand, is that it's referenced too many times. There's multiple other books that have been removed that could have been mentioned that aren't as sexually explicit as that one. So that's, I mean, I don't want to run in circles, so that's just where I stand.
I think it's mentioned, but it's grade level appropriate. I mean, kids whisper about these things, so if I was a kid reader at that age and there were whispers of that throughout a book, then it might make it fun to read. But there is nothing explicit or pornographic at any point in time.
So it sounds like we have discussed all of our findings. It sounds like we are all set in what we're ready to vote on again. So if I could call for another motion.
I moved that we keep the book on the shelf.
Liz Cannon moves that we retain the book in circulation. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, Katie seconded. Do we have to roll call this vote, or is it an all in favor?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Ansbacher. Do we need to individualize the votes?
I think under the circumstances, particularly for the benefit of the minutes, you should roll call it.
Okay, Sarah?
I vote to retain the book.
Liz?
I vote to retain.
Laura?
I vote to retain the book.
LaDonna?
I vote to retain the book.
Katie?
I vote to retain the book.
Colleen?
I vote to remove the book.
Christy?
Vote to remove.
Diane? I vote to retain the book. So that's 2 votes to remove, the rest are to retain. So again, at this time, there are no pending district-level challenges for the committee to review. When a formal challenge is received, an email communication will be sent to committee members with detailed next steps. I would like to adjourn this meeting at 6:02.